Chapter 4 of Operation Terror by Murray Leinster. Read by Mark Nelson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Operation Terror, Chapter 4. "The evidence," said Lockley, as Jill looked at him ashen-faced, "the evidence is all four monsters. But there was something in that broadcast that calls for courage, and I want to summon it. We're going to need it." "If they aren't monsters," said Jill in a stricken voice, then they're men. And we have a Cold War with only one country, and they're the only ones who'd play a deadly trick like this. So, if they aren't monsters in the ship, they must be men, and they'd kill anybody who found it out." "But again," insisted Lockley, "the evidence is still all four monsters. You've been very loyal and very confident about Vale, but we're in a fix. Vale would want you in a safe place, and there's something in that broadcast that doesn't look good." "What was in the broadcast?" Lockley said wryly, "Two things. One was there, and one wasn't. There wasn't anything about soldiers marching up to Boulder Lake to welcome visitors from wherever they come from, and to say politely to them that as visitors they are our guests and we'd rather they didn't shoot terror beams or paralysis beams about the landscape. We were more or less counting on that, you and I. We were expecting soldiers to come up the highway headed for the lake, but they aren't coming." Jill, still pale, wrinkled her forehead in thought. "That's what wasn't in the broadcast," Lockley told her. "This is what was. The troops have formed a cordon about the park. They've run into the terror beam. The broadcast said it was weakened by distance and only made the soldiers uncomfortable. But they've moved back. You see the point? They've moved back." Jill stared, suddenly understanding. "But that means—" "It means," said Lockley, "that the terror beam is pretty much of a weapon. It has a range up in the miles or tens of miles. We don't know how to handle it yet. Whoever or whatever arrived in that thing Vale saw, it or they has or have a weapon our army can't buck yet. The point is that we can't wait to be rescued. We've got to get out of here on our own feet, literally. So we forget about highways. From here on, we sneak to safety as best we can, and we've got to put our whole minds on it." Jill shook her head as if to drive certain thoughts out of it. Then she said, "I guess you're right. He would want me to be safe. And if I can't do anything to help him, at least I can not make him worry. All right, what does sneaking to safety mean?" Lockley led her down the highway running from Boulder Lake to the outside world. They came to a blasted-out cut for the highway to run through. The road's concrete surface extended to the solid rock on either side. There was no bare earth to take or hold footprints, and there was a climbable slope. "We go up here and take to the woods," said Lockley, "because we're not as easy to spot in woodland as we'd be on a road. The characters at the lake will know what roads are. If we figure out how to handle their terror beam, they'll expect the attack to come by road. So they'll set up a system to watch the roads. They ought to do it as soon as possible. So we'll avoid notice by not using the roads. It's lucky you've got good walking shoes on. That could be the deciding factor in our staying alive." He led the way, helping her climb. There would be no sign that they'd abandoned the highway. In fact, there'd be no sign of their existence except the small smashed car. Lockley's existence was known, but not his and Jill's together. Lockley did not feel comfortable about having deliberately shocked Jill into paying some attention to her own situation, instead of staying absorbed in the possible or probable fate of Vale. But for them to get clear was going to call for more than sentimentality on Jill's part. Lockley couldn't carry the load alone. There was an invasion in process. It could be, apparently, an invasion from space. in which case the terror produced would be terror of the unknown. But Lockley had conceived of the possibility that it might be an invasion only from the other side of the world. Such an invasion was thought of by every American at least once every 24 hours. The fears it would arouse would be fears of the all too thoroughly known. The whole Earth had the jitters because of the apparently inevitable trial of strength between its two most gigantic powers. Their rivalry seemed irreconcilable. Most of humanity dreaded their conflict with appalled resignation, because there seemed no way to avoid it. Yet it was admittedly possible that an all-out war between them might end with all the world dead, even plants and microbes in the deepest seas. It was ironic that the most reasonable hope that anybody could have was that one or the other nation would come upon some weapon so new and irresistible that it could demand and receive the surrender of the other without atomic war. Atomic bombs could have done the trick had only one nation owned them, but both were now armed so that by treacherous attack either could almost wipe out the other. There was no way to guard against desperate and terrible retaliation by survivors of the first attacked country. It was the certainty of retaliation which kept the actual war a cold one, a war of provocation and trickery and counter-espionage, but not of mutual extermination. But Lockley had suggested, because it was the worst of possibilities, that America's rival had developed a new weapon which could win so long as it was not attributed to its user. If the United States believed itself attacked from space, it would not launch missiles against men. It would ask help, and help would be given, even by its rival, if the invasion were from another planet. Men would always combine against non-men, but if this were a ship from no farther than the other side of the earth, and only pretended to be from an alien world, America could be conquered, because it believed it was fighting monsters instead of other men. This was not likely, but it was believable. There was no proof, but in the nature of things proof would be avoided. And if his idea should happen to be true, the disaster could be enormously worse than an invasion from another star. This first landing could be only a test to make sure that the new weapon was unknown to America and could not be countered by Americans. The crew of this ship would expect to be successful or be killed. In a way, if an atom bomb had to be used to destroy them, they would have succeeded, because other ships could land in American cities where they could not be bombed without killing millions, where they could demand surrender under pain of death, and get it. Lockley looked at the sun. He glanced at his watch. "That would be south," he indicated. "It's the shortest way for us to get where you'll be reasonably safe, and I can tell what I know to someone who may use it." Jill followed obediently. They disappeared into the woods. They could not be seen from the highway. They could not even be detected from aloft. When they had gone a mile, Jill made her one and final protest. "But it can't be that they aren't monsters. They must be." "Whatever they are," said Lockley, "I don't want them to lay hands on you." They went on. Once, from the edge of a thicket of trees, they saw the highway below them and to their left. It was empty. It curved out of sight, swinging to the left again. They moved uphill and down. Now the going was easy, through the woods, with very little underbrush and a carpet of fallen leaves. Again it was a sunlit slope with prickly bushes to be avoided. And yet again it was boulder-strewn terrain that might be nearly level but much more often was a hillside. Lockley suddenly stopped short. He felt himself go white. He grasped Jill's hand and whirled. He practically dragged her back to the patch of woods they'd just left. "What's the matter?" The sight of his face made her whisper. He motioned to her for silence. He'd smelled something. It was faint but utterly revolting. It was the smell of jungle and of foulness. There was the musky reek of reptiles in it. It was a collection